go, go, go. That's the birthday. That's the birthday.
They hate us, I want them to love us like they love Pat, but holla in the lab, the text, tell you I'm Z-Dog, and the plan is to talk about an article, yo. Tom Heineberg.
What's up, Z-Dog MD? What we talking about today, boy?
Yo. This is my favorite subject, and that is hating on stuff that doesn't work. Because what do we call alternative medicine that's proven to work? Medicine.
Medicine. It's just
Hit me, Logan.
regular medicine.
Science! Guys, it's your boy, Dr. Zubin Damania. That's how you say it. For those who care, there are very few of those. We are coming live and direct out of Studio Z here, and we are going to unpack some recent news based on an article in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute. And what I want to do is actually go through the article and understand kind of what kind of study it was, how they looked at stuff. But basically, if you look at the press, and Logan, there should be an image from the Independent, and I don't know if we shared this link, but Logan's going to pull it up with his massive technical skills. Stolen from the internets. There it is. This is the sensational headline. Cancer patients who use alternative medicine are more than twice as likely to die. Terrifying, isn't it? And the question is the article that they base this on worth that sensational headline? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, a little bit of housekeeping, yo. Y'all know this is a podcast. It's available on iTunes. It's available on SoundCloud. It is now officially available on the Stitcher, whatever that is, because people who have Android phones are like, Z-Dog, we don't use iTunes because that's like weird Steve Jobs-y stuff, which in fact is the title of today's show. We're going to talk about why we called it This Is What Killed Steve Jobs. But with Stitcher, you guys should be able to stream on any device, also with SoundCloud, but SoundCloud's a little gunky. So people who like to use Stitcher can now share Incident Report, can review it. It helps us a lot. As a podcast, we think this show actually works quite well, even though it's designed as a live video show, because again, it's daily cool content. And when we get our guests on, you guys are gonna be like, I wanna share that, yo, but I got an Android. Ah! Also, if you wanna contribute to support the show, patreon.com/ZDogMD, you could donate as little as $1 a month. I see everybody who donates, and I make a little mental note that when the apocalypse comes, me and Tom will try our best to save you. We'll try, because we're going to be fighting evil, because that's what we do, right?
And
Tom?
zombies.
Hella
Definitely
zombies. Hella zombies.
Not
Logan will
zombies.
already be safe in some compound somewhere.
Yeah, Logan's going to be in a compound in Utah with his 12 wives, because that's just what he has been planning the whole time I've been.
How you know, Z?
Jessica Evans says, I love how y'all fight clickbait with clickbait.
Oh.
But then substance on top of that.
You know what,
Hashtag
Jessica?
Save the world.
I think Jessica just nailed our whole ethos. It's like fight clickbait with clickbait. That's going to be our new motto.
Yeah.
So we take clickbait and we turn it on itself, and then we make clickbait out of it, and then you click because boom, you got baited, son. All right, here's the deal. Logan, pull up the image for the title of the actual article. There it is. All right, I'm going to read this for y'all on the podcast. This is the Journal of the National Cancer Institute.
Fake news.
And this is the real
Fake
study.
news.
All right, we don't just read the news. We make Z go read the original studies, y'all.
Yeah,
Okay?
and believe me, that hurts
Science.
my 44-year-old eyes. First of all, the fact that Logan just called the Journal of the National Cancer Institute fake news is probably, for some reason,
Liberal media, Z.
the funniest thing I've ever heard. It's true, it's all funded by the government, man. The National Cancer Institute? Huh? What about the independent free market cancer institute? Huh? Yeah, that's called the Dr. Oz show, and it's whack. So it doesn't work. All right, so anyways, back to this article. Brief communication, and it is rather brief for an article. The use of alternative medicine for cancer and its impact on survival. Really, really interesting, because everybody will ask you, well, complementary therapies and alternative medicine for cancer, isn't the chemotherapy industrial complex trying to keep us sick so that big pharma can make money and big oncology can make money and big radiation can make money? That's a thing, man. No, because apparently this study tries to address, do people who choose alternative medicine, and we don't use the term complementary here because complementary usually refers to using alternative medicine with actual proven Western therapies. This study actually looked at two groups of patients. Patients who got diagnosed with cancer, all right, but then actually chose alternative medicine. They did not want chemo, they did not do radiation, and they did not do surgery, because who trusts a white guy with a knife? Because that's my surgeons right there, am I right?
A la Steve Jobs, who was a very intelligent dude.
Tell us the story.
Who chose alternative medicines. Well, wasn't the story that he thought when he got pancreatic cancer, which is one of the most deadly cancers, that he could cure himself by just taking in herbs and spices, basically? What?
Yeah.
Colonel Sanders.
He basically called up Colonel Sanders and like, give me the 12th herb and spice because I need that. Well, here's the thing with Steve Jobs, if you believe anything that was written in the biography, which was a tremendously good biography about him, the Steve Jobs biography, he, for many years, was a fruitarian. He only ate fruit. He would grind up carrots to the point where actually people noticed that he turned orange. He went on these very extreme vegan or vegetarian diets and was very much into his health and into the ideas that he could control his health as a kind of control freak that he is through diet alone. Now, when he was diagnosed with neuroendocrine type pancreatitis, I believe it was, he had an opportunity at that point to have surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, whatever the standard of practice was for that particular unusual variant of pancreatic cancer that he had. And he was seen at Stanford, and actually I know people who've looked at his films at the time, and I was sort of privy to some of that information before the public was. And he was quite clear. I think David Agus, A-G-U-S, took care of him at one point and was desperately trying to fight off all the quacks that were insinuating themselves into his care and trying to foist him on all this unproven stuff. But he apparently declined that original aggressive therapy, and it's reported that one of his greatest regrets about his health was not aggressively going down the conventional cancer therapy route. And so that's another reason why, if Steve Jobs has trouble, and the guy's rich AF, right? He's connected to everyone in Silicon Valley, he's directly connected to Stanford, and he chooses this path. What does that say about the hope for everybody else? They're going to make horrible decisions unless we figure out what's going on. I think this article is a start, and there's some problems with it, but in general, it's quite good. So should we go through it, Tom? What do you think?
Let's do it. Scott Smith says, easy on the ridicule. He did create Apple. But we're not ridiculing him, Scott. We're just pointing out fuzzy thinking where it exists. He was a genius who had some strange ideas about his diet.
Well, this is going to go right into the article, because the demographic of the article are that choose alternative medicine tended to be higher levels of education, more affluent, and more left coast, so more Pacific, Intermountain region. So basically hippies who are highly educated. And Steve Jobs was exactly that. He dropped acid, he went to India, he was a fairly enlightened cat. But with that level of education, my theory is people think that they can kind of control everything through their mind or through their nutrition and things like that. They're smarter than the docs. They don't need the experts, and the expert is just a one point of view. And that's where things go south in a hurry. So you can be really smart, really successful, and still F up major. And that's what we think happened to Steve Jobs, although it's impossible without cloning him and doing a placebo-controlled trial of Jobs versus Jobs. Actually, Jobs versus Bizarro Jobs, I would give one of them one of those spooky Spock goatees that he had in the mirror dimension. Anyways, so back to this. Let's go through this and unpack it a bit. And Chris Smith says, brilliance can be baffled. It's true. And didn't he also have Asperger's syndrome, Ronnie Ann? I don't think he did, actually. But from reading the biography, I don't think Asperger's was his issue. I think he was just an insane genius. Okay, so looking at the basic structure of this, they set it up with the premise that delay or refuse. No, by the way, what's the first thing you always look at when you look at a study? Z-Pack, when you're trying to diagnose, okay, the press says this about this study, this is the next big thing. Eating avocados will save your life. Never eating meat will save your life. First thing you do, where do you go in the paper?
Sample size.
Sample size? That's a good guess, Logan. Wrong.
Tom?
I'm going to go with straight to Goop to see what Gwyneth Paltrow thinks.
That is very close to right. Logan, there is an image that I have of a box of text alone. Can you pull that up? And it says notes at the top.
Boom.
This is the first place you go when you look at a study, the notes section. The American I'm going to read this to you guys from this article. The American College of Surgeons and the Commission of Cancer have not been, okay, blah, 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 blah. Now, Skylar Johnson, one of the, so Who paid for the study? This study was granted exemption by the Yale Human Investigations Committee. Schuyler Johnston, MD, has no relevant financial interests, activities, or relationships or affiliations. So that's one author. He's basically said, I have no conflicts. Henry Park is the next author. He gets paid honoraria from Varian Medical Systems, from Radonc Questions LLC, which may be like a review thing. I don't know what that company is. And Carrie Gross, MD, another author, receives research funding from 21st Century Oncology, Johnson & Johnson, Medtronic, Pfizer, and James Yu receives research funding from 21st Century Oncology. So what we learn from reading this section, the acknowledgments or the notes section or the conflict section, is are there financial biases or other biases that are going to affect the overall design of the study? Well, it's clear that these guys work in cancer. They have worked with the big players in cancer. So, of course, that could potentially set up some bias. Now, as we go through the article, we want to look at it through the lens of, is that bias becoming apparent in the design, or could it have flawed some of the thinking in the study? All right, that out of the way, that's always a good way to start looking at papers. Let's go through the article. So they start out by saying, delay or refusal of conventional cancer treatment, and they call that CCT, that's their acronym, when done in favor of alternative medicine, or AM, may have serious survival implications for cancer patients. Now, they make that kind of vague, like it means maybe they could be saved by the alternative medicine, or maybe they could die. But we're reading between the lines, and these guys are biased towards, hey, if you don't get chemo, radiation, surgery, the conventional sort of evidence-based stuff, you're risking your life, all right? So you already kind of know where their bias is. So, however, there is limited research evaluating the use and effectiveness of alternative medicine, partly due to data scarcity or patient hesitance to disclose non-medical therapy to their providers. So how many patients who've suffered through something are kind of scared to tell their doctor, well, I smoke a little weed on the side, or I use some Garcinia cambogia, or I use this herb, right, that my naturopath gave me on the side, but I'm not telling you because I'm embarrassed because I know you're going to make fun of me. And this is a problem for several reasons, Tom, because the first reason is that the doctor wants to be, at least in theory, if they're not an asshole, they want to be part of your holistic care. And if they don't know what else you're doing, they can't help or advise or even support you, right? The second thing is, if you're taking other medications, even if they're, alternative, homeopathic, well, homeopathic's all BS, but sometimes the adulterates may be a problem. But or herbal medications, they can interact with your standard medication, and this can really affect outcomes, can cause side effects, can cause death, and can affect efficacy. So you want to tell your doctor, but many people are nervous about it. So I think that's interesting that they start with that. These guys clearly have experience in this space. Then, to address this knowledge gap, we use the 4 most prevalent cancers. Okay, let's do a little review. The other day we talked about the difference between prevalence and incidence. Tom, what is prevalence?
How much stuff happens?
How much stuff happens? Be a little more specific.
Within the study?
Okay. Almost. Logan, you have thoughts?
Was I here for this one?
I don't know. It's like a pop
You're
quiz.
both here. I love pimping these two because they're not doctors, but they're pretty smart.
Science!
So Tom, what he's done is kind of conflated incidence and prevalence. So prevalence is how prevalent, meaning how much does a disease exist in a population when you look? How much is it already there? Okay, over what period of time is it already there? Incidence is how much the disease develops over a period of time you're watching it. So it doesn't exist, and then what's the percentage that it actually develops new in the period that you're studying? Okay, so in this case, they're saying, these are the most prevalent cancers. So if you look at all the cancers existing at this moment, these 4 are the biggest ones that are by numbers, and that is breast, prostate, lung, and colorectal. These are the cancers that are the big ones, especially in Western populations. Okay, so that being said, in the US, they looked at the National Cancer Database, and I wish I knew more about the NCD. I didn't have enough time to really dig into it, so people can weigh in on how that is compiled and organized. And it's between 2004 2013, and they wanted to identify the factors associated with alternative medicine selection and comparing the survival outcomes between alternative medicine and conventional cancer treatment, okay? So they took this database of stuff that's already happened. So already we know this is an observational sort of retrospective study. It's not something where they started at point 0 and moved ahead in time with 2 groups that were randomized, right? So it's not the gold standard of evidence, but it's the best they could probably do with the database information that they had. okay? So that being said, you already know there's a weakness in the trial, which is it's kind of looking back over time. It's observational. They're kind of looking at data instead of actively acquiring it from patients moving forward. It's not a randomized control trial, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is how they did it. They said, okay, the patients in this database are coded with, I imagine what are similar to ICD-10 codes. And that's one reason we bitch and moan in healthcare about ICD codes all the time. It's just a billing thing. It's a glorified cash register for the insurance companies. This may all be true, but it's also a way to actually study disease in a population using EHR and the data set that you gather from that. So in a way, it actually can be a huge, powerful tool for understanding big data and its relevance in studies and trials. So in this case, they looked at that database and they said, okay, things that were coded as other unproven, cancer treatments administered by non-medical personnel. So in other words, alternative treatments. Now again, this is a broad bucket. So you could imagine there could be some miscoding here, some misunderstanding. But in general, these patients chose alternative treatments as opposed to conventional cancer treatment. And the way they define that is they didn't get chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgery, or hormone therapy. And patients with metastatic disease when they were diagnosed, in other words, stage 4 disease is what they're calling it here. Stage 4 disease based on the metastatic disease or stage 4 disease, which is another definition that often includes metastasis, or they got upfront treatment with palliative intent. In other words, people gave them treatment because they were dying. They were like, oh, you need radiotherapy right now because this huge tumor on your spine is going to kill you right now. Those people and those who had unknown treatment status, they were excluded from the trial. So this is what, when you're looking at evidence, this is what they call exclusion criteria. It means who you put in the trial is just as important as who you leave out. So they left out people who already had widespread metastatic disease, advanced disease. Okay, so it's earlier cancers and cancers that they documented some treatment regimen for in this database. Okay, that being said, they then talk about a bunch of statistical stuff, Kaplan-Meier, estimator, log rank test, Cox proportional hazard regression. We're not going to get into all that jazz today. We're going to skip through this maybe another time. We'll get a statistics expert to teach us about that stuff live. But right now we're going to focus on the nitty-gritty of this, and we're going to assume that their statistical analysis was robust. Now, is that a good assumption to make? Not always, because sometimes people screw this stuff up, right? In science, but we're gonna give them the benefit for this one mostly because I don't understand these maths enough to dig into it. Yes.
Math.
Math. Hit me, Logan. Math. All right. So back to the lecture at hand. They then took 281 cancer patients who chose alternative medicine in lieu of conventional cancer treatment. Okay. Now, they then kind of looked at them for a mean follow-up of about 66 weeks, so almost a little over 5 years, and compared them to a matched group that did do the conventional cancer therapy. And we'll get into the weeds of that, but I want to show you guys some crazy results. First, Logan, there's some graphs. Can we pull those up?
Boom.
Oh, now those who are watching on Facebook are going to be like, I can't see this because it's like 320p resolution. But when we repost this on YouTube in 4K, you'll be able to see it quite well. This is from the original study, which my wife had to get access to because she is an academic physician currently and has access to the full article. And this is one of my big gripes, is that this journal did not allow a free PDF full article for me. And that makes me mad because it's science, people. It should be open to everybody. All right, let's look at this. And it's not as scary as it looks. In every graph you see here, the top line is a series of hashed dots, right? It's a dotted hashed line. And the bottom line is a solid line. The top line represents patients who got conventional cancer treatment over the period of months. It goes from 0 months to 84 months. On the x-axis, on the bottom axis there. So the bottom axis, the x-axis is time going from left to right. So as you move from left to right, you're going forward in time. And as you go from the bottom of the chart to the top, that y-axis for the nerds out there, that is the surviving fraction, the percent of people that are still alive. It starts out, obviously, at 100%. So at the time they start, everyone's alive. And then over time, people start to drop off, presumably from their disease. And this is what we're seeing. People who took conventional cancer therapy are surviving in an obviously visual way better at 84 months, better at 12 months than people who don't. Now, each of these quadrants of the graph is a different subset. So let me go through it. Go ahead and pull that up again. And then we're going to get back into the broader stuff. So graph A at the top left, that is all patients. That's the most important one. So all patients, alternative medicine versus conventional therapy. The conventional therapy people are at the top. They are surviving better. And if you look at that article in The Independent, they said it's like a double. They're twice as likely to die using alternative medicine in lieu of conventional cancer therapy. That is a damning result if it's believable and true. The other groups are different, actual different cancers. Now, group B there is breast cancer. Look how dramatic the differences are in breast cancer between alternative medicine and conventional therapy, right? It's a pretty big spread. Now look at number C. That's the bottom left. That is prostate cancer. And it turns out this was the one cancer that did not show a statistically significant difference between alternative medicine and conventional cancer treatment.
That's interesting because I have a family member going through stage 4 prostate cancer at the moment, and they're like throwing the book at him. He's getting, chemo and radiation. He's got to have a prostatectomy. So you're saying he could just eat some apples and shit and he'd be fine?
What's wrong, Tom, about what you said? So what were the exclusion criteria for the study?
Damn it, I gotta take a test again.
Tom's like reading comments and I'm talking about exclusion criteria and then I'm pimping him. It's just like rounds. And it's like he's going through medical school for the first time and I'm torturing him and I love every minute of it. So Tom, in the beginning, we were talking about the patients that weren't allowed in the study, and it turns out anyone with stage 4.
Stage 4 wouldn't be allowed in.
Yeah, right. Or metastatic.
Right.
And so he would have been excluded from the study, and actually one of the theories purported
But prostate cancer does pretty good in general in early stages, right?
Science. Tom Heineber is a scientist. So most of the patients here had early stage prostate. How long does it take for prostate to kill you at the early stages most of the time?
Years.
Years.
It's like a decade.
And what was the follow-up here? At the most, 84 months it looks like. Is that right? Yeah, months from diagnosis, 84. So
yeah.
You're talking about not enough time to actually even see a difference emerge that's due to the prostate. They are dying of things other than the prostate, possibly.
Right.
So this is one of the ways you have to look at these trials, is what is going on. Now, a really well-done trial, they will talk about these issues in the discussion section. And it turns out that in this trial write-up, they do. So it shows that they're actually thinking about their data quite well. So prostate wasn't significant, but then you can see colorectal in D, same thing, severely, let me make sure D is colorectal. No, sorry, D is lung.
Yeah.
Big difference. Now look at this graph, guys. Lung is bottom right. Look how quickly people die from lung. And compare it to, say, breast, or look at prostate. Most of them are alive. Isn't this interesting? So this is a visual depiction, and then top left is colorectal, somewhere in between. So lung is really still a terribly fatal, very...
Man, if you get lung into alternative, that is just like straight death.
Straight
Look at that
death.
graph.
Straight death. But the thing is, even if you do conventional in lung, there's
Pretty
a high
bad.
likelihood you're
Pretty
going to die.
bad.
So some people are just like, I don't want to go through it. I'd rather die a little earlier with a quality of life where I'm using something mild and I'm seeing a naturopath who sits and waits and talks to me. I'm suspecting that's the draw of it. And honestly, it's hard to hate on that unless it prevents somebody from getting care that they need. And it looks like in most cases of cancer, you are going to take a hit if you choose alternative, right? So, by the way, the bottom graph is, let's pull that up, colorectal, sorry. So top left was...
Colorectal is a pretty steep drop between the
Top left was all patients. Yeah, so colorectal is the one where it really drops off on alternative versus conventional. But colorectal, again, the standard death rate in conventional is not as bad as some of these other cancers. And you can compare it to all patients at upper left. So
And we should note, you guys, that the p-values were calculated by a two-sided log rank test. So just to let you know, I read that off the bottom of the study.
Are you trying to intimidate me, Tom Heineber, with your chi-squared statistics? Because I'll tell you, one of those things, like we learn this stuff in medical school, they teach it to us, and then it goes in here, and then the people who don't do research, it's like, gone forever.
Oh, we've already lost 500 viewers just because hashtag boring AF, you know what I mean?
Somebody did.
Listen, guys, I got to be honest with you. We do science, we do entertainment, we do medutainment. We don't care. We're going to do it all. Now let's get back into the entertainment part. So looking at the discussion section here, they really go through, well, okay, well here's the thing. You choose alternative medicine, you're much more likely to die depending on the cancers. And guess which is the worst? It's breast in terms of the differences. And it turns out when they statistically look at who's choosing alternative medicine, it's enriched in females, it's enriched in people with higher education, it's enriched in West Coast and Intermountain regions. So the people more likely to choose it, the Steve Jobs types who think they want this natural alternative option, are more likely statistically to have the breast cancer that's more likely to do very badly with alternative
Oh, trust me, I'm
treatment.
picturing the exact woman who doesn't want traditional treatment for her breast cancer. She lives in Santa Monica. Her child's name is Sun Meadow. She doesn't vaccinate. And she's not going to want any of you evil doctors coming near her.
And she once did an ad for the Gut Buster on TV, and she was on Three's Company, and her name is Suzanne Summers. She's actually doing well, I understand. But see, so here's the thing now. Let's differentiate quickly between complementary and alternative. So the way they're defining complementary is you do chemo, whatever the standard conventional cancer therapy is, but then you can also go see your witch doctor. And it turns out we have no data on those guys. But my suspicion is that they'd probably do okay. And if they did better, then you would see that there's a mind-body component with the alternative stuff, big placebo, which is great, and there's a science and placebo component with the conventional therapy. So combining everything, right, maybe that's not such a bad idea. Now people like David Gorski, who's an oncologist, who's a big science-based guy, and we're going to get him on the show soon, he may disagree with me, and we'll have that debate on the show, although he's my idol and I love him in a man-crush way. So that being said, what are some other potential sort of interesting facts from this study? And what they found is again, excluding complementary therapy that's combined with that, right? It's kind of hard to know. Now, one of the things they said is that there's still underreporting and sort of some flawed methodology where they might be, people could have, in the alternative group, could have gone off and gotten chemo somewhere and not, those data points didn't connect. So maybe some of those alternative people actually also had conventional therapy and they still died. But so here's the question, does that invalidate the study? Does it show a bias that makes the study invalid? No, in fact, if that were true, the two groups ought to be even closer than they normally would be. So what they're saying is what we might be seeing is even less effect than actually exists, because there's some bias in the pool. The alternative guys were actually getting conventional therapy, and so they look closer to the standard group on aggregate. So again, that kind of bias actually understates the findings. So these guys are actually, you're seeing less of an effect than actually exists. So again, that doesn't discount the findings here at all.
Dude, I am totally getting why everyone's science illiterate. This is so much less fun than just typing into Google, Rothschilds, cure for cancer, Fort Knox. And then you just be like, oh my God, they have the cure for cancer at Fort Knox. This dude on YouTube just said it was true. I think that intuitively, amazing.
America.
You nailed it, man. Like, I gotta be honest with you, my heart sinks a little bit every time I have to go to primary literature because the shit is written poorly. You have to dig through because they're trying to hide some of their methodological failures. You have to think, and pay attention. And let me tell you, when data's coming at you, the rate we're generating data now in the world is so intense that it's impossible to keep up. So my hope is shows like this give you at least the tools where you will go to primary data, especially if you're a healthcare person, but even if you're not, you can watch us and you can parse some of this data with us. You can have the tools, like if it's something that's really important to you, like I got to know a little bit about everything, right? But you may want to be the world's expert in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. You may want to be the world's expert in Chiari malformations because you suffer from it. And I have a lot of Z-Packers who suffer from both these conditions. They're rare. You may want to read that primary literature and make sure you're not, swayed by some BS press or a quick overview or the abstract, right? This is why we do what we do. We're trying to raise the general scientific literacy so then we can have these discussions.
Exactly. We are trying to give it to you guys straight. And really, it's all about alkalinity. If you just keep your body alkaline, you're going to be cancer-free. Like, it's pretty effective.
Bro, have you been hitting that vape pen again before the show? Like, I keep telling him, don't vape before the show because I don't know what's in it. but it's not good for the show.
It's alkaline though.
It's
We
hella
gotta we
alkaline.
should do a piece on the alkalinity thing because you've seen that meme
It's so
floating around,
stupid.
right? That's an alternative medicine piece that goes straight at cancer patients, and they think, well, if I drink this stupid fucking pH water, I'm gonna live forever. I'm gonna cure my cancer. Like, no, dude, you're gonna fucking die. 'Cause that's just regular water.
I'm going to say, okay, guys, we're going to go into a little tribe talk mode right now, okay? So hit share now so that when people are watching, they're going to be like, why did you share this filthy piece of crap? So there's a dipshit in Las Vegas who goes to every talk that I give, and he brings bags of this alkaline water, and he always, like when we do Q&A, he's like, isn't it about pH and alkalinity, and if you fix alkalinity, cancer will go away? And I'm like, you shut your hole. You are an idiot. You don't even understand the acid-base. This is the other thing, the citizen science thing, like the bro science thing. It's like, bro, that's not how science works. It doesn't work that way. You have to understand the basic principles of physiology if you're going to make statements like alkaline water is going to cure cancer. It's freaking nonsense, right? It just doesn't make any sense at all. It's like homeopathy. It makes no sense at all, except as a placebo.
But, Dr. Man, it's a lot easier for me to understand as a patient.
That's true.
A lot easier than what you just said about alternative therapies and the complexities. And trust me, I'm going through the cancer process with a close relative at the moment. There are no clear-cut answers. They don't give you anything to go on. It's all a guessing game. They don't even know it seems like they don't even know what they're looking for. They don't give you anything actionable that you can do except sit here, do these treatments, and wait to die.
And we wonder why the alternative medicine and supplement industrial complex runs the fucking show. Because we in Western medicine have dropped the ball. I think you pretty much summed it up. We are shitty at communicating a lot of the time. We don't have time. Why? Because we're clicking boxes and we're going for quality metrics and we have productivity requirements and the administrator's breathing up our ass. Why? Because we ourselves sometimes have trouble parsing through all this data, and we're occasionally prone to listening to what the farm rep has to say about the latest whatchamacallit, and patients have a BS meter that is very, very high. Unfortunately, it fails when people come at them with love, empathy, and concern, like a lot of the supplement and alternative medicine industrial complex does. And this is why we have to, ZPAC, when we build Health 3.0, which is personalized, unique person medicine that puts humans back at the heart of it, but leverages the evidence, leverages technology, leverages precision medicine in service of the patient right in front of you, where actual outcomes that are generated can be measured in a real way, in an aggregate way, not just individually, but as a societal effect. If we're going to build that, we would need to reconnect with our patients and each other in order to actually have outcomes that matter. Why? Because we complain our patients are non-compliant and they're going off and doing alternative medicine. And who is ultimately dropping the ball there? I am going to take personal responsibility as a practitioner of the Western arts. We can do better and we will do better because that's our mission.
You know that trope where it's like, I came home, doctor told me I had 6 months. I lived for 12 years.
That's right.
You ask a doctor like what the time frame is or how this disease is going to progress, they give you these very vague, non-specific answers. I've never had a doctor be like, you got 6 months, go and plan your affairs. I guess if it was really bad, a doctor might say that. So maybe it's a good sign that the doctor I'm dealing with in this scenario is not saying that, but it's hard to parse what they're telling me.
Yeah.
And when I ask for metaphors or analogies, which is the only way I can parse it, I don't get good ones or I don't get any.
That's a problem. The best doctors I know, the best nurses I know, the best nurse practitioners I know, they're the ones who use metaphor and story to present complex data and gray areas. Because the reason you're not getting that information, Tom, is most doctors don't know. They have a vague intuition about it, but they really don't know. We're really bad at predicting length of life and cancer and any end of life stuff. And so as a result, if we tell our patients something, we know our patients are going to hang their hat on that. And so it's very tough for us to do that. Now, if we can come up with stories and metaphors and ways of explaining our thinking, that's vastly better. And it actually also shows that we care enough to tell a story, because we are story-driven creatures. That's how our brains work. That's how we remember stuff. We're tribal, social animals.
It's also how we organize. People organize around fictions and around stories. So even if homeopathy is, alkalinity, whatever, blah, 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 that's a nice story that we can all organize around to sort of support each other.
Yeah, I agree. Tracy Altman asks the eternal question that millions of people private message me in an insane conspiratorial way. How come all these holistic doctors are dying? So have you heard this whole thing?
Oh, that they're killing the holistic doctors?
Yeah.
Maybe
Like-
they're just using their own treatments on themselves when they get advanced cancers. Because we just showed the data on that, so.
Yeah, it's a self-selecting bias. No, here's the thing, guys. There's this whole conspiracy theory that people are killing holistic doctors because they don't want them to tell you the truth that alternative medicine heals you over the medical industrial complex, even in the face of data like this. And I actually had the sister of one of these murdered holistic doctors message me a few months ago and say, can you talk to these assholes who are saying that my sister was murdered? Because it's all over, it's online conspiracy theories that she was killed. Yeah, she was an osteopath who did some complementary therapy, but she was also a Western doctor, and she would have wanted to punch these people in the face. They're using her death, which was a domestic violence murder, as an excuse
Right.
to back their stupid butt-fuck agenda that's bullshit, right?
It also takes away from domestic violence.
And it also takes away from domestic violence.
Yeah.
So
The real problem of domestic
this
violence.
this idea that there's a rash of holistic doctors are dying, hey, dipshits, we could actually show you thousands of regular Western doctors who die in violent episodes from mysterious circumstances. It's called life. It's what happens. So with your confirmation bias, you're going to go and find a few cases of doctors who died and go, see? It was chemtrails and the Illuminati. Not saying it wasn't, but, you know.
And red meat.
Oh, hella red meat, bro.
Red meat, too.
Hella red meat.
Well, I mean, yeah, how do we fix just general science illiteracy in our society? Because I find that, I wouldn't be able to read this study and really parse it. And I actually read. A lot of people don't read.
I didn't know he could read.
I didn't know you could read either. I knew you can audible. No, but this is why we have the show. And I think increasingly we're going to try to broaden it. And I know people will get bored in certain parts, and some people will be like, oh, I already know this. And some people are like, oh, I didn't even know the difference between incidence and prevalence. And so those kind of things are why we do this show. And increasingly we're going to try to broaden that. And since an eclipse is coming, I'm going to use the term penumbra. Okay? That little area where we do some Muggle crossover.
That's right. And I'm going to one-up Z, and I'm going to say panopticon. You like that?
Portobello.
Portobello? I'm a little intimidated by that
That's the
word.
biggest B word you can come up with? Portobello.
Logan comes up with Portobello. Portobello. Guys, do me a favor. Hit share, hit like, go to the podcast on Stitcher, iTunes, rate it, review it, subscribe. If you have thoughts for who can sponsor our video, Dr. Man, hit us up. I posted the song earlier today. Doc Vader is really sad, guys. Show us sad Doc Vader. He is really sad. He's wrapped himself in patriotism because he's depressed. Because today he put out a video on Doc Vader's Facebook page of him singing a love song to Padme, and it only has 7,000 views. And he's devastated. So go to Doc Vader's Facebook page, hit like, and go share that video because he's hurt deep inside. And you know what hurts him? Emotions and also sand. And on that note, Tom, anything to add?
One more chance. Go for a big word that starts with a P.
Porta potty.
And we're out.
I hate you so much, Logan Stewart.
Go. That's the birthday. That's the birthday.